The nightmare is always the same. I go to bed in a country on its way to becoming great again. People have jobs, kids are playing, but then something changes. I wake up in some alternate future. Criminals run our country. They enforce their reign with private servers, hidden technology, weapons of war, and a corrupt Justice Department. At the top of it all sits one woman, the leader of the largest unprosecuted fraud in human history.
Well, Charles, I may as well go to bed now. It's not getting any better than that.
That is just outstanding.
Thank
Amazing.
you, Charles. We've discussed the process a bit in the past, how typically what happens is you will be inspired by a film, and sometimes there's ones that you have that I've never heard of, and I say, forget that, no one's going to know that. But usually it's you who are the person who's coming up with the ideas for the film, and then I come up with some graphic treatment. And I have found that, and I've seen this in other aspects of life as well, my personal feelings about the film very often play into the success of the graphic treatment. And I was hit by inspiration last night. Somebody out there on the interwebs took the video game Grand Theft Auto and recreated the entire Terminator 2 film. So using selected pieces of that, we were able to create a parody of a parody.
Well done. I want to watch that again and again.
Thank you, Charles.
Unfortunately, when you outdo yourself, you just set these new high standards that's going to cause me to say, well, if you could do that,
exactly.
Let's do.
Yeah, it keeps getting more and more difficult. But I think we are getting to a point in the history of our country where Judgment Day is coming, and this is like an epic battle. Honestly, I'm seeing this as like Cold War 2.0, and it's Donald Trump versus the deep state. Lines have been drawn, sides have been chosen. I think Dr. Corsi is sitting in the catbird seat. He is the one man in the country who has the political and legal standing to challenge Robert Mueller authentically, with the help of Larry Klayman and the doctor's legal team, to bring this, malicious prosecutorial misconduct charge. I think there's a lot of evidence to show that that has been happening.
Yeah, I'd say this. The planets, the continents, and the weather and everything else are sort of realigning now. And if you think about it, George H.W. Bush dying late on Friday, and Donald Trump returning from the G20. Which is, I think the G20 is, in essence, a very bad idea to begin with, kind of puts a nice set of bookmarks or bookends on this chapter that began, some would say, in 1988. You might go back to the 81 or even a little earlier.
63?
Or before that. But as regards Bush, and globalism, it really began in earnest in 88, 89, and that was the first sign of progress in the Berlin Wall, and then Eastern Europe, and then Soviet Union, et cetera. We've had 30 years, a 30 years war, as we talk about it, by the globalists, the unregulated globalists, against the average American, the poor American, and people living in high-cost countries who can easily be replaced by good and evil machines. So this all seems to be coming together at a nice moment. And interestingly, we've done so much of this. You and I have done so many appearances together and apart, so many interviews. You reach a point where you begin to lose perspective on how much work you've actually done. And at least I get very, there you go, yeah.
I don't want to distract you, Charles, and I definitely don't want to do anything that's going to upset you, but this is a picture maybe a lot of people haven't seen. Are you aware of this picture?
Yeah.
I mean, it's certainly not definitive, conclusive evidence, but this is something that a lot of people have evaluated for many, many years. It's a photograph taken right outside the Dow Tech's building in Dealey Plaza, and this was taken on November 22nd, 1963. We see this man standing right here wearing this type of tie with his hands in his pockets in a very distinctive sort of way. And this image has been compared to many contemporary photos of George H.W. Bush. We also have Fletcher Prouty testifying that he saw General Lansdale there on the grounds in Dealey Plaza on that day. So we know that George H.W. was involved with the CIA, and there are lots and lots of CIA fingerprints all over the JFK assassination. So I don't know. I was deeply saddened to hear of the death of George H.W. Bush, because I had always held out hope that there might one day be a trial, but that's all I'm going to say about it.
But what I was going to say is one of the people that we're close to was talking to his wife, and his wife was a staunch Trump supporter and a smart lady. And her reaction was that there's been a lot of talk about draining the swamp and a lot of talk about bringing these rogue political assassinations, I wouldn't even call them prosecutions, by Mueller to heel, and yet there really hasn't been the kind of tangible action that I think most of us, even I count myself as somebody who's all in favor of draining the swamp. It is past time to see Judgment Day. I mean, the contrast, as we'll get in today, between what the Clintons have been doing their entire lives, what they've gotten away with, and what ordinary people, and even powerful ordinary people, get sent to prison for 5 and 10 years for far smaller offenses. The contrast is so stark that it really is time for Donald Trump, once he rests up, I think he's back from Buenos Aires, to step up the game here. And it's time for Judgment Day. I mean, people are nonstop. He has never had in his presidency a second of a honeymoon period. There was not one moment where they were, the mainstream media were applauding him for his historic victory. No, it was immediate. Get Trumpy, as we've done several shows on that.
Now, Charles, I'm sure you're familiar with this guy. You're speaking about powerful people who have been targets of wrongful prosecution, etc. I did an interview yesterday that I would have to say, outside of the work that you and I have done together, it's one of the most important interviews I've ever done. Bill Binney spoke to me about, among other things, the incarceration of Joe Naccio, who was the CEO of Quest, who refused to turn over customer information and digital data to the NSA when they basically demanded that he do that, and he became the target of this type of malicious prosecution. He went to jail, and he's like a millionaire. Billionaire. I mean, that's kind of nuts when you think about that. The average person wouldn't have the ability to defend themselves against the type of legal assault that people like Dr. Corsi are facing right now. And I mean, I have to keep saying this. Dr. Corsi is just, I think, whatever people think about the doctor personally, whatever people think about his reporting in the past, we've got to acknowledge that he's in a very unique position right now. And unless people out there think that Robert Mueller should have the right to maliciously prosecute and use terrorist interrogation tactics against U.S. citizens, I think it's very important that we stand in support of Dr. Corsi. And I know he's got a legal fund that people, I'm sure you can just Google Dr. Corsi and legal fund, or you can go to freedomwatchusa.org and support Dr. Corsi and Larry Klayman and the doctor's legal team, because this is where the rubber is meeting the road, and it's got to happen now.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a very important period, and I guess in a few hours, we both just discovered it'll be Hanukkah from...
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out, Charles. Maybe you're Mossad, you know what Hanukkah is.
Oh yeah, I'm triple deep undercover.
So, Charles, should we get right into the slides today?
Yes. So, I think we're in a moment where it actually is going to end up suiting Democrats, Republicans, and independents to bring the long, devastating, in quotes, reign of the crooked Clinton family to an end. for Democrats, it's not as if we're talking about somebody who's had a distinguished career putting legislation together in Hillary Clinton that really improves the lives and lifts the hearts of people inside and outside this country. I mean, Hillary Clinton can point to just blunder after blunder after blunder, including most recently this ill-advised trip up to Canada, where we talked about it in the recent broadcast. They book a stadium for 19,000, maybe sell 3,300. Then they say, well, we'll go to a smaller venue in Montreal, 3,000, and they managed to sell 77 seats.
That's awesome.
That should tell you a little bit that the game is up. People are not buying the idea that a 72-year-old two-time loser is the obvious person to take on Donald Trump in 2020.
No.
Or whoever may run if Donald Trump doesn't run. So this is a good moment in time for people around the world to say, and really it's in the interest of Democrats, to just get rid of the Clintons, bring them to judgment, and take away this cloak of invulnerability which has shielded them their entire careers.
Yeah. Kevin Shipp had a great tweet of another photograph from the Clintons' tour. Here it is. This is unbelievable. I mean, there's even less people there than you would think, Charles. He's got this is just somebody's cell phone took this picture, so it's not the news or anything like that. What do you think? Can't be cheap to book a venue like this, and it certainly makes you look good. We one time did a 3D recording of a concert for a band in Las Vegas, and I won't say what the band is, to me the place looked pretty full, but they were unhappy with the turnout to the extent that they disallowed the release of the video.
Really?
Yeah, because they said it will make them look bad because it's not packed.
Jam-packed? That's not jam-packed. I maybe this is, if you think about it, remember all the to-do about the Trump inaugural crowd size, and people were saying the crowd wasn't as big. I think there can be little debate. This isn't a case that this picture was taken, at 4 o'clock in the morning before the speech or 4 o'clock in the morning after the speech. That's during the speech.
Right.
And you really got to wonder, if I had paid for a ticket thinking something was going to be full, and I got to it, let's say, late, I wouldn't even go in.
Well, as an audience member, I don't necessarily care if it's full or empty, but when I went to look at tickets for the Beacon Theater, it's like $700-800 to sit up near the front. I'm thinking about getting a $12 one and then just mosey up to the front and join the mosh pit as the show goes on. They probably won't notice. They'll be like, hey, wait a minute, there's one person in the front row, get him out of it.
But another thing is, we're going to go into this a little bit on the next slide, but in the case of the Clinton Foundation, we're not talking about whispers, we're not talking about, imaginary theories about what could be wrong. We have introduced into the public domain over 100 videos, we're going to get into that, most of which have companion slides with lots of links, thousands of pages of documents. We know, because we've been through this before, that the FBI and IRS, in theory, have been investigating this Clinton Foundation. And we also know, because unlike private companies, public charities have to submit filings, federal, state, foreign filings. There's a lot in the public domain. So we know that there's a gigantic record of criminal, suspect, and I would argue criminal, action by the Clinton Foundation. So the biggest question in this, and this is what I said to Jerry Corsi when I started on this project long ago, and at least talked to him about it in April of 2015. The question here is not, is this a fraud? Of course it's a charity fraud. The question is, why did so many people in so many governments and so many government agencies let this fraud go from a modest fraud to the largest set of unprosecuted frauds in history? And chief among that, the people who overlooked this or missed it, are three people who figure very much in this whole Russian collusion delusion investigation. Robert Mueller, James Comey, and Rod Rosenstein, as we'll go in yet again, were centrally involved early on, starting in 2001, when the government decided to look at a set of potential crimes. They weren't looking at Bill Clinton, they were looking at whether public corruption and charity fraud was committed using the Clinton Foundation. That's what they were investigating for 4 years, and they were so great at it that they couldn't see it.
Well, they're lawyers. They're getting paid by the hour.
I guess that's right. So,
no offense to the lawyers that we like.
Yeah, exactly. So if we could just go back to the slide afterwards, you started to get into this, the one after that. Yeah, thanks. So for our new viewers, I notice again you're up pushing on 74,000 subscribers. I think the pace of growth is returning, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, been working hard on doing good videos, interviewing interesting people. We've been back to talking about Vegas. I had John Cullen on last night, who, I mean, Charles, you'd be quite interested in this. He's presented stunning evidence of possible involvement by the Saudi Air National Guard. There was a training exercise going on at Nellis Air Force Base all throughout September that involved the Saudi Air Force, and they had rented out the entire W Hotel. There are multiple elements of evidence that indicate an aerial assault from a helicopter. John Cullen has presented a training video from the Saudi Air National Guard, or some sort of publicity video that shows the configuration of this type of Boeing AHI helicopter with 4 commandos riding on the skids. And there's now testimony, firsthand testimony, from a woman who was a witness who is absolutely certain she saw 4 guys hanging off of a helicopter and gunfire coming from the helicopter. Not to mention the downward trajectory of bullet wounds in so many people that is vastly steeper than the angle that would have arrived from 32-135. So although the FBI and the Las Vegas Metro Police have closed the case, I've now reconnected with John Cullen, and we've been investigating that. So there's a lot of unanswered questions.
Good for you. So just for the new people who may not know our approach, this is a different approach. This is not Jason and me just lecturing you. This is trying to get people who have an interest in seeing the scales of justice return to balance to get involved, to read through what we've done, listen to what we've done, and then if you like what we've done, engage with your friends and engage with the powers that be at the state, federal, and foreign level to make sure that now that all this evidence is coming to light, make sure that something actually is done about it. It's fine to talk endlessly on cable TV and radio and here. This is about action. We've got to get this large charity fraud brought to justice, and then we've got to get the various governments to get money back to the taxpayers, to the governments, to bring down the massive debts that we've created at federal, state, and foreign level. A perfect way to do this is to expose, regularize, prosecute, convict, and incarcerate the people involved with this gigantic set of frauds.
Absolutely. So, of course, Charles, people can reach you on Twitter, and you are tweeting all kinds of useful information. I know that people find it very educational to follow you on Twitter. You are at Charles Ortel, so it's very easy to find you. How's the shadow banning been going? You've broken 33.5, so that's good.
33.7, yeah.
Well, I mean, weren't they kind of holding you back? Or
it was stuck at 33.2 for a long time, but in a recent week or so, it started to move up again.
Okay, that's good. And I'm back 24.5, so that's not the all-time high, but it's interesting. I noticed that a lot of the stuff that I put out on Twitter doesn't get much more than single-digit retweets and comments, but I see people with far fewer followers that seem to get thousands of retweets, so I'm not sure how that Twitter magic works. Charles, did you get to see any of the footage of Laura's protest outside of Twitter?
I have not seen that.
Laura Loomer, of course, had handcuffed herself to the front door of Twitter, and she's been added to Larry Klayman's class action lawsuit against Twitter. I mean, there's definitely something going on there at Twitter that's not right. Larry is very busy, doing all kinds of things. So I don't know, Laura's webpage is not loading, so we'll come back to that maybe later. But back to the slides, of course.
Right, and so what we try to do is give you the opportunity to look for yourself at a whole bunch of evidence. In as I said, in every one of these videos, there are companion slides that you can pull down for free, and you can follow the links, and you can see for yourself what we're talking about if you don't believe us. And if you think we've made a mistake, which we're human and we do make mistakes, please contact us with constructive suggestions. We block people who are, the very few loons who dare try to engage in behavior that is unacceptable don't do very well with us. But on balance, we've gotten many nice constructive suggestions. We try to take those that we can. Yeah. If we go to the next page, what we often do is, because we're chunking out, at least Jason and I together are chunking out 2 videos a week. Yeah. We forget about some of the oldies and goodies. So I went back here, and no offense meant to people who are not included. I was just trying to come up with 15 that I thought might be interesting. And if you look, the average, this goes back to the 20th of August, 2017, and I was only looking at the old ones. I only wanted to get to the 15 or so. And if you look, Jason, at the very bottom, there's 335,000 views just for these 15. Now, we've done 123.
Wow.
The average length is 2 hours and 25 minutes, 2 hours and 25 minutes. The average, what is that one there? The average number, that's an interesting statistic. The average number of upvotes as a percentage of views is at the very bottom 3.39%. So that's interesting. That means roughly for every 30 people who watch it, one of those people will say, you know what, I'm going to upvote it. And it's interesting how tight the distribution is. It's not like 0.5 up to 8 or whatever, averaging to 3.
Pretty consistent.
It's pretty consistent. And I would bet that there are people out there who understand how YouTube works and YouTube metrics that would be able to give us the beginnings of an assessment of how we're doing. What I'm told by, not scientifically, just by talking to the people I know, this is highly respectable performance. And just to quickly go through why I think a number of these are interesting. The Children's Investment Fund Foundation was among the earliest videos we did. That's an example, in my mind, of a crooked foundation operating with an investment fund. And I don't yet know, the investment fund has been phenomenally successful, but the books and records of the companion foundation are atrocious in the US and the UK. And so there's a big amount of work to be done once we get further along here, once the penny finally drops and the investigations proceed. This will be a big story. The business model, we try to go through it a few different ways. This is a shorter one, 1 hour and 15 minutes. The Walking Tall, I'm just skipping around a little bit here. The Walking Tall 3, I think, was the one we did with Jan Weinberg. And that's one where we were trying to push the president along and his team along. We've been talking and talking, and talk is cheap. You get to a certain point, what the heck is going on? And that's one where we exhaustively, that one goes for 3 hours. No, almost 2 hours and 40 minutes rather. Then we're chunking along there, and then it started spiking up in traffic. Not the smartest guys in the room is a takeoff on the book and movie about Enron, but that that's over 2 hours, close to 3 hours, 38,000 views back about a year ago. Wow. You've Got Jail was one of my personal favorites, but we still don't have jail for the Clintons. Racket Man, I like that one.
Now, it's interesting, Charles, some of these, dip down below 20,000. There was, of course, that time where it would seem that malicious people purchased downvotes. There was the first video we did with Fabian.
This one, History of the Corrupt Globalist World?
No, I think it was the one with the Pink Panther in it that got 1,100 downvotes. It's such an outlier that, it's just impossible that that's organic, and I think someone else actually announced on the internet that they were buying downvotes to put against that video to affect the search results, and it just causes me to wonder what other unscrupulous methods can be utilized to sabotage the channel, prevent the message from getting out, and who would be motivated to do that? We're trying to share information about corruption that affects everybody's lives and is helping people perpetuate pretty awful crimes. So it's not a matter of someone just being jealous and trying to be funny and putting in a crappy comment. They're actually taking time and spending money and organizing individuals to sabotage what we're doing. It's quite telling.
It is indeed. But so this, though, I mean, hats off to you, Jason. I mean, this was your idea, and we're banging this drum, not slowly, quickly, twice a week. We're going to keep at it until we establish that the corruption is impossible to fix, in which case we're going to be leaving the country, or it's fixed. Yeah, it's fixed. So, and the final one here is interesting. We had John Solomon on.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. He's doing extremely important work at the Hill, and both in print and video, and Hill TV. And we'll be talking about the forthcoming week and what he's teased out on Friday.
And I would say John Solomon is a man of unimpeachable integrity. He would not even allow me to purchase a pizza for him when we were first met and were having something to eat, because he didn't want the influence of pizza held over his head.
Is that right?
I mean, I guess he said.
Or maybe he's lactose intolerant.
Oh, he ate it, but he just didn't want me to pay for it. I thought it was a very honorable thing to do.
Indeed. So we're going to take a little bit of time on this slide here. Generally, we rush through it, but this time we're not going to do that. The first link here is, I've lost count the number that the great Katya Bainova of Sputnik has done. It's a formula with her. She sends me questions. I attempt to answer the questions, and then she puts together stories like this, typically where she takes some of my answers and then weaves it with other people. But what's really important to note, and I obviously did not plan this, 3 scandals that you and I have been focused on are all coming together at exactly the same time. It's not just the Clinton Foundation. It's the mishandling of classified information. It's the implosion at General Electric, and we could add other multinationals, but General Electric, and it's the Clinton Foundation, all coming together at the same time and reinforcing themselves. Now, it's possible that they'll all blow apart, and go off in different kilter at the same time as well. But for the moment, and in the week ahead, it certainly does seem to me that GE is really falling under immense pressure. There are more and more chatter of experts saying, well, GE better look at the bankruptcy case, because that could very well happen. Jan's work is also being pulled in now. Jan Weinberg has done a lot of work on exposing the deep state, exposing corruption in defense contractors, but specifically exposing the fact that Hillary Clinton claimed, I think under oath, or swore that she had turned over all work-related emails. Yet Jan, through his contacts, separately uncovered that GE and Boeing admitted to having emails involving the Clinton Foundation and Hillary Clinton that are not part of the 33,000 emails that were turned over. So Jan has been on a relentless crusade to get that exposed, and he's making excellent progress with that. Just at the same time, other people are beginning to wonder what the heck is going on with GE, and to a lesser extent at Boeing. And then, of course, we have all the drama at the Clinton Foundation, which we're going to cover in a second. So this is all coming together at the same time.
I actually saw Jan last week. We're going to be doing some more episodes of the Audacity files, so people who aren't familiar with Jan's work can go back into the archives there of Crowdsource the Truth and check that out. It was really ingenious how they exposed GE and Boeing's knowledge of those emails. So Jan, like me, was a Bernie fan, but I think when you learn what he's discovered about what Bernie knew when they had that debate with Hillary Clinton, you might have a different opinion about what went on. GE's in the in the crapper there, Charles. The stock's not doing so well, and so it's up a little bit here. But I mean, isn't it? Your number is 6, right?
Well, no. The recent historical low point was $6.66. No lie. But let's just take a second on GE. I have great empathy, particularly for the workers, retired workers who are counting and will get their pensions, but there's going to be a lot of pain in this looming implosion at GE, and I don't discount that, and I'm not glorying in the potential demise of GE without thinking through the human consequences of it. That said, on the other hand, General Electric held itself out and behaved in an unbelievably arrogant manner for a long time. First under Jack Welch, then under Immelt. And frankly, it took a backdoor government bailout in 2008 and 9. They shouldn't have been allowed to get the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation guarantee for their finance company debt the way they did. And I would argue, and have argued, that the Warren Buffett rescue was actually a fraud on the common shareholder.
Wow.
But the point of it is, this is a monumental set of mistakes on many levels, on strategy levels, on human behavior levels. And it's a set of mistakes that sadly spreads around the world, will have impact around the world. And so this set of mistakes, the fall of GE from its pinnacle to where it's headed now, is something that really needs to be examined in business schools, in law schools, on academic campuses. We really need to think through and understand how it could be that a company that was this powerful, with so many, in theory, smart people, that were had personnel departments that was rating the managers every year and deciding who to fire and who to promote. How could so many ostensibly smart people do so many stupid things for so long and then have the rating agencies miss it, the news media miss it, the regulators miss it? I mean, this is a very important case that I hope will get studied in gory detail, and it is far more complicated than the Clinton Foundation. So maybe that's why I've started on the Clinton Foundation first, because I figure that's enough work, and then we'll see how much information comes together, whether there's any point to write about GE. This is, the next link is The American Thinker, is run actually by a fellow Harvard Business School graduate, a number of years older than I am. But he points out, if you go a little bit down the page here, Donald Trump at 9:03 p.m., so just at the beginning of the Friday Hannity show, said, "Watch Sean Hannity on @Fox News Now," and he's tweeting this out from Buenos Aires, from the G20. And then Solomon drops a bombshell suggesting that there's going to be important revelations this coming week. Now I think this definitely happened right before George H.W. died. He passed away, I think, at 10:15 or thereabouts.
Look at how happy John Solomon looks.
Not to mention Sarah Carter.
Right.
This is cat ate canary, I think.
Exactly.
But now, just so people understand John and his work with, I think, Sarah as well, on the Clinton Foundation, I think the two of them, or it might have just been John, won an award in 2016 for their extensive work on exposing the Swedish Clinton Foundation scandal, and that the Swedish Foundation was used as a way...
The lottery?
Well, not so much that. It was used as a way to curry favor with Hillary Clinton so that the State Department wouldn't go after Ericsson for doing business in Iran.
The phone company.
Yeah, the Swedish phone company. And so John's thesis is that this, and I share his concern, that this Swedish charity, feeder charity for the Clinton Foundation, was basically set up like the Canadian one with Justra to disguise who was really giving money into the Clinton Foundation, and also to hide whatever speech payments and other benefits the Clinton family and their allies may have gotten as a result of all these clandestine relationships. So John is somebody, that's just one of the facets he studied. He's also a gifted investigative journalist, so with 20 plus years of experience. So he has been doing a lot of work in the past 2 months, in particular on the Clinton Foundation, and I'm hopeful that we're going to see some major league developments in weeks ahead, if not as soon as tomorrow.
I really like John Solomon and Sarah Carter. People should follow them on Twitter.
Now, in the third story, this is another person I've had the pleasure of meeting, Richard Pollack, who's an outstanding reporter now with the Daily Caller. He broke this story on early Friday morning. And in sum and substance, what happened is that a protected whistleblower, somebody who had gone to the Inspector General Horowitz and had testified before the House and Senate Intelligence Committee and had obtained official whistleblower status protection, on the 19th of November, 16 FBI agents came to his house, guns blazing, guns out, and demanded not only to get information that had already been turned over to the whistleblower and already turned over to the committees, but then stayed in the house ransacking it for 6 hours. And that's something I don't think you should be allowed to do, particularly to a protected whistleblower. Now there's a small percentage probability that the whistleblower did something wrong, in my mind. But we need to draw the contrast here between this whistleblower. This whistleblower did not design a private server system,
right?
Did not transact 100% of classified business over this unsecure server using unsecure devices, didn't hide that fact from everybody or attempt to hide that, didn't maintain control of that information, didn't defy a subpoena and have people bleach bit it and conspire together to try to eliminate the encryption. That's not what this person based in Maryland did.
Did he make out with Putin?
Putin. I don't think he did that either.
Damn.
And he came up with his stuff. He went right to the authorities. He had been testifying. He had protected whistleblower status. And, this guy gets 16 FBI agents showing up at his house, seizing material, ransacking his house. Now, how come nothing has ever happened like that to the Clintons? How come Robert Mueller, for all the time that he was, all the time that Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, Robert Mueller was head of the FBI? Did he not know about this system? Which is ridiculous. If he did know about it, why didn't he do anything about it? So the contrast here is just so stark.
Bill Binney just said yesterday that every single thing that goes over the internet, every phone call, it's all captured by the NSA, and that data is shared with the FBI, the CIA, the IRS, the DEA, local police. All of that information is available, and certainly Robert Mueller has testified and made multiple references to having access to it. So the notion that he would not have known, even though Hillary Clinton's server was private and privately controlled and secret from the public, it's on the internet, so it's known to the NSA. There's no doubt that it was known.
Right, just amazing. And so in this piece, what we learn is that the judge who approved this raid, and I think we need to have the FISA stuff declassified, but beyond that, the Carter Page FISA request. But on this one, we need to understand when it was decided to raid this home, who made the decision, was there any pushback on it? Did Christopher Wray know about this? Who authorized this? And what is really beginning to be a pattern I'm seeing that I don't like to see is that a lot of this suspicious activity is happening in the Maryland district that Rod Rosenstein used to be the U.S. attorney for. We have the Clinton-Bush-Haiti thing in Maryland. We have Laureate in Maryland. We have this in Maryland. We have Uranium One stuff in Maryland. We have William Campbell in Maryland.
Terry McAuliffe? No, he's Virginia.
He's Virginia. But it could well be, and I've had experts tell me that we know that Baltimore. You don't need an expert to know that Baltimore is
kind of a mess.
A little bit, yeah. I was going to say just modestly better than Haiti.
Shifoli?
Modestly better than Haiti, but because it also has, most people don't realize it has a big port. So
yes.
if the city is poorly managed, and the police are not doing their job, it's a great place to be smuggling things inside and outside of the United States. So, I think if we're going to clean up any place, we ought to start with Rod Rosenstein's old district in Maryland. And we really need to understand how this judge could have seen fit to authorize this raid. And so the mainstream press, this town, I don't consider Town Hall to be mainstream, but they do good work, but the mainstream press, which if you flip this story and you said that a protected whistleblower who was during the Obama administration, well, nothing would happen. During the Bush administration, George W. Bush, if a protected whistleblower, let's say, who was trying to expose corruption in the Bush presidency, if a protected whistleblower had 16 FBI agents show up to retrieve information the government already had, you would have, CNN would be they would abandon their search for MH370, and they would go all in. And all MSNBC would be all in, non-stop. People would be yelling and screaming. Michael Moore would be putting on more weight. It would be just, it would just be going on and on and on. But this to me is an outrage, and it's an outrage that it's happening while Donald Trump is president. And it makes me wonder, which direction this is coming from. Is this coming from Mueller somehow having influence over the FBI to do this, to obstruct a line of inquiry that's uncomfortable for him and his colleagues? Or was this done by rogue elements within the Trump Justice Department and the FBI? Now, we can't discount that there is a good reason that maybe the guy says he's a whistleblower, in fact he's a rat. I mean, there is that possibility. But whatever may be the case, we need to know yesterday what's really going on here.
Interesting to see next week. I mean, John Solomon is smiling, so I wonder what that indicates.
He's a happy man. So if we hit this Judicial Watch link, they are really pounding it. They're doing great work, and they filed another lawsuit to get information that we all want to see here, people who care about the Clinton Foundation, why, under Obama particularly, and then the early period of Trump's administration, why is the Justice Department refusing to turn over information they're required to turn over concerning decisions made to impede an investigation into the Clinton Foundation? This is stuff I really want to see, and I applaud Judicial Watch for being so relentless on this topic. They've been on this, for quite a few months now, and I hope that they're actually going to get this information that is required to be turned over.
Yeah, they are definitely retrieving a lot of good documents. I've tried many times to broker a détente between Judicial Watch and Larry Klayman, but it doesn't seem to be happening.
And then in the audacity of dope, this is really something. I mean, this is so offensive. My first exposure to Sharpton was Tawana Brawley. I had purchased a home in Dutchess County when this scoundrel,
to his own charity. Oh,
yeah,
my.
But this is ridiculous.
How could that be legal?
I mean, we have Rachel Maddow and others in MS fulminating, turning beet red that Donald Trump may have caused his charity to buy a $20,000 portrait. Here's this idiot scoundrel, I refuse to call him a reverend, he's no more a reverend than you are or I am, has decided he's going to sell the rights to his life story, and the charity, he sells life story rights for $531,000 to his own charity. You're not allowed to do that. You're just not allowed to do that.
I mean, I could have guessed that. The only part of his life story that I'm interested in reading about is the surgery where they connected his esophagus to his sphincter and he lost all that weight.
Yeah, exactly. He did lose quite a bit of weight.
They removed his stomach or something. I don't think that's healthy surgery.
Yeah, but there is no way that this is a legitimate transaction. It is the definition of graft. It is the definition of annulment. It is absolutely forbidden even under New York law, which actually is pretty strict. And this is ridiculous. Here it's in the New York Post, they're talking about it. And because the new incoming Attorney General is a political hack, maybe they're not going to do anything about it. But this is something, if New York State is not going to enforce these charity laws, then Donald Trump damn well better make sure that the IRS does. This is indefensible.
I definitely want New York State to enforce the charity laws so that people who have unregistered charities can't fleece our audience for $10,000.
I think that's a good move, yeah.
Yeah.
And you've been talking, the Daily Caller is really on fire. They've got another story talking about the degree to which Google was very much, apparently, trying to adjust search results to bury analysis and news reported out of so-called conservative organs. That's just unacceptable. Unacceptable.
I wonder if that's happening to Crowdsource the Truth videos.
It could well be happening.
I mean Google owns YouTube.
And when we think, when I think about what needs to be done on the university campuses, what we have had, unfortunately, in the last 20 years is propagandists. Propagandist professors saying globalism is good, nationalism is bad, just without any real depth of analysis, any evidence, whatever. And we've created a whole bunch of younger people who have not had the benefit of diversity, of considering diversity of thought. They talk about promoting diversity, but they've been taught rigidly that if somebody appears to, if a man is walking around and he's not wearing one of those silly woolen hats with a scruffy beard, looking at a cell phone with it stuff, then he's probably a conservative and you should ignore him or you should bury the person. I mean, that kind of thinking is fine if you're, let's say, in a for-profit environment, you want to have that kind of thinking, you're going to go out of business. But you shouldn't on university campuses be encouraging that rigid, intolerant way of thinking. And the last thing you should do is allow this powerful monopoly, I would argue, to ensure that all news is sifted, all news that comes over the internet is sifted to eliminate anything that is at all disruptive to the pursuit of unregulated globalism. And that seems to be what's going on here. I think in the new Congress, in the Senate, it's high time for people to get very interested in examining just how powerful these tech giants are, examining the whole issue of whether venture capital has become a Ponzi thing. Are we back to this internet bubble where a lot of the companies that are going public are basically imaginary companies that are not really going to survive in the long run, but temporarily their values whipped up into a frenzy?
Yeah. Well, that story causes me to think of two things. First of all, it's a good reason for people to join patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth so that Google is not controlling what you get to see on the internet, or at least not as easily. And also, the Daily Caller has so many ads on it that it makes the thing jump around when I'm trying to read it. It makes me nuts.
Sorry for that.
No, not you. It's just another thing that shows us that this advertiser, I like the Daily Caller and I understand they need money like everybody else, but I really like this model of viewer-supported news sources because it's really the only way to avoid the influence of corporations that people count on to pay them.
Yeah. And now, sort of a real tragic story. The situation in France is again burning out of control, and our good friend Fabien is about to fly back to France, and I hope he'll be very safe over there. But I mean, when I see these type of pictures and news reports, this is scary stuff.
Sort of a revolution.
Yeah, it's a volatile situation, and I think perhaps Emmanuel Macron should spend less time flying around to G20 conferences and more time addressing the fundamental issues in France, which are the state bureaucracy is riddled with corruption, doesn't make sense. There needs to be massive reordering of how services are delivered inside France. At present, what they're trying to do, they've invested billions of dollars in a nuclear industry that cannot be competitive. So their solution is to force people to pay more for their electricity and their energy, and also to try to ban back use of fossil fuels. But I mean,
people could heat their homes with burning buses.
But this is the nice part of Paris, and you see this kind of stuff. I mean,
this is like World War II imagery. Paris on fire like that.
And another thing I would say is to get lectured to, as people delight in saying, Donald Trump really had Angela Merkel, Emmanuel Macron, they're lecturing Donald Trump. They're going to teach Donald Trump the virtues of unregulated globalism. I mean, this is France. I'm sure there have been similar scenes in Germany. I like to see these world leaders who think they could tell the United States what to do. I like them to explain to us, why we should really spend a lot of time listening to people who cost the world so much. The last two world wars did not start in America. They started in Europe.
Yeah, but they were financed by George H.W. Bush's father and his buddies. Union Bank of Switzerland.
Yeah. So I put this in for your benefit here.
Okay.
This is something I had noticed, because I know you like this Kennedy stuff, which is, I don't know enough about it, which is why I'm often silent when we get to the topic. But this is a very thoughtful piece that provides some evidence of what Truman thought about the deep state running amok.
The tiger?
No. That's great.
President Truman, yes, he created the CIA, and Kevin Shipp has told us many times that he regretted it almost immediately.
That's some substance of this article.
Yeah.
So that's one to read later, and then there's just two more quick ones, and then we'll get into the Clinton Foundation. Really interesting that Maureen Dowd, I don't know if you'll get through this New York Times one, but here's Maureen Dowd killing the Clintons. Curtains for the Clintons.
Well, it looks like another packed house at their show.
Yeah, and this is in the New York Times of all things. It made it through the New York Times. Sunday, New York Times.
How did they do that? I thought they loved the Clintons.
Well, she doesn't. She's gone hot and cold on it. But this is, I suppose, that one adjective that might work here is biting. It is a bite dripping with sarcasm. She is not happy with the Clintons at all.
Well, I sympathize with her and share that sentiment. The Clintons are not good.
And then I know you like The Podfather. I noticed this and I couldn't resist putting it up. I hope it gets through your blockers or whatever. But this is in the Seattle Times, not the Inquirer, which I actually like the Inquirer from time to time. The Seattle Times, there's apparently some strange artifact that you're going to be able to go take a look at for yourself that is virtually impossible to explain.
Whoops. This is about to tell us we're advertising and you're not
All right. Well,
on board.
People could try.
What's the guy got, a Twinkie from space? What's he opening?
It's some kind of metal, strange metal object that defies, I think it's on the right there, it defies explanation as to how it got there. It just doesn't make sense.
There has been quite a lot of information about like UFOs and space and stuff like that, but what did that have to do with the Podfather exactly? He was looking into something.
He's very much interested in one of the first things that he cared about apparently was looking at the alien files. I guess he's a devoted, I'm joking now, a devoted follower of Ancient Aliens on television.
Well, joking aside for a moment, I had at a time done a bit of research into particle colliders and things like that, and those were developed by a guy named initially Enrico Fermi, who was into all of this Luciferian stuff and, sort of trying to communicate with extraterrestrials by opening man-made singularities. And we've heard a lot of connections between people who followed Aleister Crowley and worked for JPL, that guy Jack Parsons, and so who knows what John Podesta's into. He's certainly got a lot of weird stuff in his closet that has remained unexplained. Even people who have gone and been photographed with James Alefantis haven't been able to provide us with good explanations for some of the things that went on over there, but we'll put that in the strange but true category, Charles.
All right. So then if we go to the next slide, now we'll get into a little bit of the meat.
Yes.
It should be clear to people that the so-called business model of the Clinton family is best captured by the impeachment counts that were voted out of the House of Representatives, and that is one part lie, one part obstruct justice. That's what Bill Clinton was impeached for, indicted for.
Pinch of rape in there.
What?
Pinch of rape in there.
Yeah, exactly. So this is an excerpt from a summary on the Justia site, which I find to be an excellent site, and there's a lot of detail in there for people who want to follow it. But one could argue that that is basically what these two have done ever since they got together at Yale Law School, Yale Lie School. That's where they learned how to lie and obstruct justice. With regard to the foundation itself, it seems to me that you could get lost in the weeds, and maybe we have done that. But if you want to take a step back and say, well, what are the important chapters in this scandal? The first chapter is the early period, October 23, 97 to January 20th, 2001. That's when the Clintons controlled the IRS, in essence, controlled justice, and were in a position, Bill was finishing out his 8th year as president, to put their supporters in key positions who would stay there, lurking and gaining more power and influence under Bush, under Obama, now under Trump. So this is a very important period that we don't study enough because the filings are so defective that you don't have the evidence that we need. And then when you look in the Clinton Foundation library to see if these missing papers are there, they're not there.
Is that different than the Bill Clinton library? No, you're talking about on their website, the library.
Yeah, I've contacted the Presidential Foundation, and the key documents that should be there are not there, right? So there has been destruction, I believe, of presidential records. And these presidential records were transferred out of the National Archives while Bill was still president.
Into Sandy Burglar's pants?
Some of that, but into a Little Rock warehouse that was really...
We've seen that photographed.
Yeah. And so the first question is, why are we so certain that the presidential records of the Bill Clinton presidency are actually intact in Little Rock? And we get a lot more concerned about this when we realize that the person who was creating the George H.W. Bush Library is the very same person who then took over the responsibility for doing the Little Rock thing. So that's one thing. Then between the 21st of January 2001, so Bill's first day in Chappaqua, and the 18th November 2004, when they illegally transferred a fake charity, or interest in a fake charity, to the National Archives, you had Comey, Mueller, and Rosenstein studying, beginning in February, by February, at least with regard to Comey, and then September, Mueller, Rosenstein, unclear when, for a long period, for more than 4 years, or I guess 4 long years. These frauds, as we've talked about in prior videos, metastasized, widened, escaped from Little Rock, began operating around the world, inside New York. None of the disclosures are proper. Then in this whole period, October 23rd, going back to the beginning, 1997, to the 8th of June, 2006, that's a long period of time. There were no controls, no independent trustees, no audits, and therefore, I would argue, all of this activity, there were no organizations. You can't say that you're a foundation when you haven't filed your taxes, you haven't had board minutes, you haven't restructured properly, you haven't done anything right, and you haven't put any financial reports together for this long period of time, yet you've raised over $100 million. You've got a serious problem, and for much of this period, Comey, Mueller, and Rosenstein should have seen this problem. It's not like they're you and me, Jason, that Comey, Mueller, and Rosenstein. They had the power of the Justice Department and the FBI. They had financial resources. They had leverage. They could have gone right up into the grill of the Clinton Foundation and said, prove to us that you are a foundation and have stopped this fraud in its tracks, but they didn't.
They did not. And you just also inspired a potential future title, Escape from Arkansas.
And then, so from the 9th of June 2006 to the 16th of November 2008, what the Clintons were doing is they were deceiving some donors, maybe many donors were willingly deceived, but they were certainly deceiving donors, regulators, and the public concerning what was really going on at these supposed charities. All the while, this is as she's positioning herself to get reelected as a senator and then to announce her first ill-fated, star-crossed attempt to become President of the United States. Then, having negotiated by the 16th of November 2008 a fake agreement that they called a Memorandum of Understanding with Valerie Jarrett, between the 16th of November 2008 and the 21st of January, where Hillary Clinton was sworn in as Secretary of State, the Clintons and the Obamas deceived the Senate. These are two senators, they deceived their 98 colleagues. They did not come forward and tell the truth about the Clinton Foundation. They didn't tell the truth about the basis upon which the arrangements that had been struck between the Clintons and the Obamas. They just they lied their way right into office. And this, to me, is a very pregnant moment here. 16 November 2008, 21 January 2009. We need to find out, and the Trump administration needs to find out what was really going on, because I suspect what was going on is that the Clintons had dirt on the Obamas had dirt on the Clintons, and a marriage of convenience was struck, and to this day it's not clear who has the upper hand in that arrangement. But the people who've been harmed by all this are we the people, the American people.
Yeah.
Suffices to say that had Americans known by the 16th of November 2008 the true state of the Clinton Foundation and the true state, the degree to which the Clintons may have personally profited by either getting cash payments or using this foundation to finance their political operation, had the American public known that, Hillary Clinton would be in jail today, not waiting to see whether she would be in jail. She would be in jail, which is why she said after Trump won, or in the run-up to the election, we've got to win, otherwise, we're all going to hang.
Yeah. Dynamex in the comments is telling us that John Podesta, the Podfather, was hanging out with Dennis Hastert at Camp, this must be the wrong pronunciation, but Camp Nose in Osaka, Japan in 1965.
And so from January 21st, 2009 to the present, I would argue that the problem here cannot be seen through a partisan lens. The Clintons, the Obamas, and the Bushes have been conspiring or have been used to conspire to obstruct real investigations into these crimes, which touch many powerful people around the world. And we get lectures from the high and mighty about, in the campaign period, remember the deplorables, they just cling to their guns and Bibles, and we're so busy, I've got 13 Blackberries, I'm on my way to Davos, so I've got to do this and that. Yeah. This is a disgusting record here that needs to be fully exposed, all the tentacles exposed, and as a guess, people are already singing. They're already singing.
We do have to give Hillary one concession. All Blackberries look alike, Charles.
Jesus. Well, there you go. Whoop it up on Canadians again. So if we go, the other thing here to mention, when we go into talk about the FBI raid and Uranium One, what you're talking about there potentially is treason. You're talking about this, and we don't yet know who, but a number of people perhaps taking personal and political payoffs in exchange for letting very powerful weapons and technologies go to our dread enemies.
Chemicals, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, that's treason. And when we talk about impeachment, there's a lot of talk about, impeach 45, impeach 45. You got to impeach somebody for high crimes and misdemeanor, and treason is definitely a high crime. And I would also note to Donald Trump's people, as they're thinking about the calculation here, I'm told by lawyers, you can impeach somebody who has left office. You could impeach Bill Clinton for treason. You could impeach Hillary. And Barack Obama and others for treason. So, I mean, if
Christmas might come early this year, Charles.
Yeah. So if we go to the next page. Okay. Now, this is something that is going to hurt the Clintons a lot, that we're going to go through here. The Clintons have made the mistake of controlling a lot of charities illegally here from New York. Here I provide a link to the New York statutes concerning registration and a link to the longer set of regulations. There's another link that didn't work that's up on the main Clinton New York State website. But you can read this stuff for yourself later, and you'll see that the laws on the books in New York are quite strict. You have to register if you want to operate here. You have to be an actual organization. You have to make truthful declarations. If there's a material change in what's going on in your organization, you've got to tell the regulators.
What if there's hope? If there's change and hope, and you have to report that.
Right. And it's very well thought through, and you have to, for a charity much smaller than the various Clinton initiatives and the Clinton Foundation itself, you absolutely have to procure a real audit, not a BKD audit, not a BKD bogus audit. You got to get a real audit from a firm that believes it's a bad idea to cook the books, and it's a worse idea to cook the books for your client. I mean, ordinarily, management puts the books together and walks over to the auditing firm. Often it's a big thing. The auditing firm is intimately involved during the process, but it's management takes the first crack at it, and then the auditors say, no, you got to change this and change that, and you negotiate.
Needs more salt.
But in BKD's case, it certainly looks to me, given the low level of talent of the chief financial officer, Andrew Kessel, who's still there, been there since April Fool's Day 2004, it seems far more likely to me that BKD was brought in to make a semblance of order out of these crazy books that make no sense at all. And they may have gone from being simply just an auditor to the very dangerous place of being centrally involved in this fraud and then covering it up for so many years. So under New York law, the Clinton Foundation can't come waltzing in from DC and Little Rock and set up a secret office in Chappaqua and another one in the Harlem office, another one down 77 Water Street, and have all these affiliates and branches around the world and take money from governments and not disclose any of that in New York. Each failure to do that is a serious crime.
Well, they didn't want to tell you because they knew the truth would upset you.
Right.
And to be fair, BKD was just trying to make tigers great again, Charles.
Tigers have always been great.
Exactly.
But if we go here, this is an interesting link. Now, Simpson Thatcher, we've talked about this in the past. When I was very young, 18, I spent the summer working as a proofreader at Simpson Thatcher. I had friends there. That's the wrong link, Jason.
Oh. Which one, this one?
This one here.
Yeah, there's something weird where the mouse doesn't show up on that monitor.
Okay, if we go to the attachments, and then document request list, okay, that'll come down here, I think. All right, here we see, this is from Simpson Thatcher, okay, a fine firm. And if we go down a little bit, it says we make, in order to assist us, please provide us with a copy of or access to the following documents for each of the foundation and any other entity with which the foundation shares directors, officers, or staff, each an entity. Okay? So they're asking for this in early November 2011. And Simpson Thatcher, it's not like, if I went and I said, with new career, Jason, I'm going to evaluate all of your movie work. I make a request like this and you say, Charles won't know. He won't know the difference between a cartoon and a movie. He's just tell him anything. This request was made by one of the world's experts on New York charity law, working within Simpson Thatcher, literally written the book, New York Nonprofit Corporation Law.
And not Stephen Biz.
Yeah, exactly. Not Truman the Tiger. So here they ask, and you can assume receive. Look at the stuff list of all the entities, all the stuff that Stuart Dean's been talking about, certified copy of the charter or articles of incorporation for every single entity, not just the charities, Bill Clinton Inc., everything, list of all the states, evidence of authority to do business. I mean, it's just a comprehensive request. 3 years of audited financial statements. They didn't have 3 years of solid audited financial statements at that point.
No wonder they didn't send it.
But look at this, auditors' letters to management for 3 years and any written responses by management. Now let's stop there, B2, very important. That's when, the BKD would have sent a letter to dopey Andrew Kessel and Bruce Lindsay, the CEO, saying, you are going to represent to us all sorts of things which were not true at the time. And then on the basis of those representations, Andrew Kessel and Bruce Lindsay would have signed them, the letter. They would have sent it across state lines, maybe, various places. And then BKD would have issued an audit that then would have been communicated around the world on the basis of the lies that had been certified under penalties of perjury by Kessel and by Lindsay. So there's a lot of stuff that they keep going here. Annual information, tax returns, reports, audit and revenue agents' reports, IRS letters.
It's a lot of stuff he's after.
It's a lady was asking for it.
Oh.
Pending litigation list, including copies of all complaints, pending consent decrees and applicable injunctions. They had some of those. Pending or threatened proceedings. All right, we can stop there. You can see that here's a serious law firm making a serious request which was or was not honored, but also deciding we've had preceding presentations where we've taken you to the email that was addressed to Simpson, that had Simpson Thatcher in the header, but they misspelled Simpson Thatcher, and of course that was by Chelsea Clinton. And there we learned in that email that there had been a meeting of initial findings that wasn't in the formal set of emails that we'd seen before, that they did what I would imagine they'd do. They'd ask for all this stuff, and then Simpson Thatcher said, listen, you don't want to have our first conclusions in writing in a format where they could be discovered one day. You want us to come out to somewhere that's safe and then we're going to go tell you what we really think, and then we'll decide how to massage our work so that, you know, if it's bad stuff, it won't look as bad later. That's a whole path that, because this information is now out in the public domain, it has been unchallenged in the public domain since October of 2016. As a guess, if 16 FBI agents showed up, in particular at the accountants, they would get a lot of this because there is no privilege for accountants. There's no, they can't hide behind that. The accountants probably have copies of correspondence with Simpson Thacher. They most certainly do.
Do you think it's possible that PhD in diarrhea Chelsea Clinton would misspell that name so that it doesn't show up in a search?
No.
Like if someone's searching her emails?
Yeah, I don't think she's that smart. I honestly don't think at all she's that smart. But it's a good question. So if we go back in, this is, I just excerpted from the regulations, section 91.7, and there are lots and lots of regulations in New York, but the sum and substance of this is that absolutely under New York law, absolutely, they were required to submit a real audit, which they've never done, and for this purpose, they have to give information about any chapter, branch, auxiliary, or other subordinate unit. And they, of course, did do that. I mean,
is that any charity that wants to be in New York?
Of a certain size, yeah. Because the whole thing you're worried about is you're worried about just this case. You know, a foundation that has no authority whatsoever to raise money for AIDS decides to come into our good city, where there are people who in state who make a lot of money and are looking to have tax deductions. So the possibility that you have a crooked scheme where politically connected people thought they could buy influence with a future president and then take a fake tax deduction to reduce their state and federal taxes, knowing all the while that Hillary was going to be president and so pressure would be put in a Democratic state not to investigate this, is a massive, massive abuse of power. And this kind of behavior, you'll see that the exposures for the Clinton Foundation are mostly in the high tax states like California and New York and Massachusetts and Illinois. They all have similar types of problems like this. You can't waltz in here and say, I'm going to collect money for Haiti, and then collect money and use it to pay for a wedding, for example, if that happened, or to pay for personal expenses or political stuff. And so this is a section that's meant to get you to understand that you can't do this, okay? So, but the Clintons went ahead and did this, and worse, what they did, and this is, I've been waiting to do this until the audience had built. So now for the first time, I'm going to show you this is relatively small money for the Clintons, but people are in prison now. Former Congress people are in prison for offenses less than $1 million, or what we're now going to go through in the next few pages.
If I had known you were waiting for the audience to build, I would have gotten you a big gulp Slurpee, Charles. Michael Moore will get that joke.
Yeah. All right, so we've told you before that, and this is a link to, I don't know why I didn't notice that, but anyway, this is a link to a long segment that we did, I think, where we explain, I hope I did the link properly. Which one is this? Okay. Yeah. This is, I can't see the name of the segment yet.
It hasn't loaded yet.
Anyway, yeah, Zero Dark Dirty.
Right.
That was one where we took people through in great depth the degrees to which the Clinton Foundation had gutted its legal authority by, on November 2nd, 2013, illegally concentrating power to run the affairs of the main Clinton Foundation and therefore all of its subsidiaries in the hands of a family for their lives. You're not allowed to do that. Okay, and since they were not allowed to do that, they did their level best to try to hide it, but it didn't work. After she lost, June 27, 2017, they had to file paperwork in New York that proved that the bylaws had been amended. If we go back into the body, we don't have to hit this link because on the next page I have it, but if you want to get the personal income tax returns for Bill and Hillary, you can find them, interestingly, for 2013, 14, and 15, but not for 16. So after she lost, she said, I'm not going to see 16.
Why is that?
Well, because she probably doesn't want to show, she doesn't want to lie yet again about donations that we're going to show you that were made to the Clinton Family Foundation, which is another illegal charity.
Has Hillary called for Trump to release his taxes?
Oh, of course, just
really.
Like
Rachel Maddow.
Right.
We should show Rachel Maddow's taxes. How much is she getting paid as a rogue scholar to tell lies about Peter W. Smith and help spread around the nonsense that Shane Harris is trying to push on people?
Yeah, private tax returns you can't get, but when you run for high office, the convention is that the candidates like to put out their returns. So we also don't have to hit this link because you've seen it before. If you want to see the massive set of false and materially misleading tax returns put out by the Clinton Foundation, just go to their site and you'll see what they've done, and then you'll see what they've omitted. So there's a phrase we've talked about before, taxable expenditures. That's where, let's say hypothetically, the Clinton Family Foundation, which is a private foundation like the Gates Foundation, though much smaller, makes donations to the William J. Clinton Foundation, saying that it's a public charity and that they have no relationship to that public charity, even though on November 2nd, 2013, Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton concentrated control over this public charity, thereby rendering it not a public charity. So this link here, Jason, gives people a sense of, and it provides resources about what happens when you make taxable expenditures. And it's not a pretty picture.
Not good.
It's not good at all. And it's not good when you do it many, many times. So there's a lot of information for people to read and understand.
Maybe Al Sharpton should read this.
He better be reading that.
Why did they put that in the newspaper? Were they proud of him, or they were pointing out that he did something wrong?
I guess he's just got immunity. I mean, he's just somehow figured out that he's never going to get targeted for anything, so he's living large, and he needed $500,000, and so he said, why not? I'll have my charity buy the rights to my life story for $500,000. That's a fair value.
What do the
get
people
BKD to value it? What
do the people who give money to that charity think about that?
Where they want a piece. But if we go back in,
I think he wants a piece of cake.
You don't have to hit this, but for people who are interested in understanding the size of the deficit, our deficit, it's not just the federal deficit. You got to look at federal, state, and local combined. And by my calculation, government spending all in, as seen on these BEA tables, is about $500 billion a month.
It's crazy.
Right? So we got to get that spending under control. I would like you to hit this link. I did a piece for this thing called the Boston Broadside, where I get in some depth into this issue of private, of taxable expenditures, and also on the insanity of letting these very expensive endowed institutions, expensive and financially endowed institutions, hawk this globalist corruption as progress, because it's not progress. We're bankrupting nation after nation, and we're trying to encourage people to support this unregulated globalism. We're persecuting people who are nationalists, because that's yesterday's news. We're, I think, gutting the Constitution. Anyway, this is an article that summarizes some of the concerns that I have and had about the corruption in the Clinton Foundation and about this issue of taxable expenditures. And it's a great publication. It's an old school attempt. Why they think they're going to make progress in Boston is beyond me, but nonetheless they're trying. And they were kind enough to let me write a piece. This is an interesting one here, this nonprofit law link. This is a famous firm, Proskauer, that actually got into some trouble. And one of the lawyers who's currently working for the Clinton Health Access Initiative, I think, did some bad work for the Clinton Foundation in 2009, trying to create Clinton Health Access Initiative. But this provides a pathway to a link where it explains the very tough rules that apply to an American charity that wants to do work internationally. The Clinton Foundation has never validly acquired the right to do international work of any kind. Indeed, they held themselves out as a presidential records repository and research center to be based solely in Little Rock, not in Hot Springs where they bought some land, not in New York, not in Boston, not in California, certainly not around the world. So this gives you a sense, if you want to understand some of the rules, here's a tutorial on the rules they should have followed had they wanted legitimately to do international work. And of course, the Clintons don't believe in doing that.
Yeah, they don't want that.
We've showed this memo before, and you always joke about it, so let's put it up there. Why anybody would need to write this memo that says a charity is not allowed to engage in illegal activities or activities that are contrary to public policy is, is one of these. This is in the category of, does it really need to be said?
No, I love this memo because it's exactly like the sign on the train that says, do not get off the train while it's moving. I figure, let's accelerate evolution and let whoever wants to get off the train while it's moving, go ahead and do that.
So this gives you, if you really want to, if you're not sure why a charity shouldn't be allowed to engage in illegal activities, this is from 33 years ago. And it's definitely
33 years ago.
Yeah, exactly, 33 years ago. It's definitely worth reading, and it should be crystal clear, having read this, that the Clinton Foundation began life October 23rd, 1997, flouting these laws.
People should tweet this at Robert David Steele. He can read it.
Exactly.
Give him the.
Actually, maybe also to Eric Hansen at BKD, who may think that he's just in charge of adding numbers up and subtracting numbers and multiplying and dividing, but actually, one of the things accountants are supposed to kind of check is when somebody comes in and says, I want you to audit my charity, you might want to check and make sure that it is a charity and not a slush fund, because it's kind of difficult to defend yourself as providing a good audit for many, many years for something that's the largest set of unprosecuted frauds in history. And also difficult to explain to Price Waterhouse and Cohn Resnick, firms that followed you, why you didn't give them a heads up in the first meeting saying, actually, you might want to not take this client.
He's got tickets to the game, Charles. He can't be bothered with accounting for things.
Yeah. Now here, just for the newbies, if you hit this FBI vault file link, people say, well, the FBI, they didn't know about this. They couldn't possibly have known about this. Well, here's a three-part thing. Anybody around the world can read these. It's about 1,000 pages all in. James Comey's name is on this. Robert Mueller's name is on this. I don't know that Rosenstein's name is specifically on this, but there is massive evidence that there was indeed an active FBI investigation, in theory, into this Clinton Foundation that hopelessly failed to see the obvious. And if nothing else, the people who are standing now outside the FBI thinking about how to reform it, bring it into the 21st century, ought to look at this file and say, why did we miss this fraud?
I think the FBI is in the business of not seeing the obvious.
So I call again, and falling on deaf ears, but I call again on the powers that be in Arkansas and New York to appoint a conservator to come in, kick the trustees out, establish what had really happened here, and much as has happened in the case of the Madoff fraud, work with the authorities around the world to recover the vast sums that have been basically diverted from this foundation, and the vast amounts of tax revenue that should have been collected on all these illegal activities needs to come back in out of the Clinton family, and out of donors to the Clinton Foundation who should have known better, and into the budgets of the various governments that need money so badly. We're talking here about a potential of recovering, with penalties and interests, possibly, from all charities, you could be talking about recovering $500 billion.
Wow, $500 billion.
Right, because you're going to go after the donors, you're going to go after the Clintons, you're going to go after a lot of people with deep pockets. Now, some people may be saying, well, he hasn't provided any details on this major league set of accusations. What we're done here is, if you hit just to show it one time, Jason, this is the Clinton family's tax return, federal tax return, as obtained off of the taxhistory.org site. And mind you, you can get these tax returns for other candidates too, not just the Clintons. But there it is. and I think if you hit it, yeah, it's 64 pages long. There's a lot of detail. We're not going to go into the detail, but people who are interested in looking at their taxes, you can see this. I lifted some of the key lines back in the body of that slide. And we're now going to talk about those key lines. I first of all lifted how much did they say they gave to charity. Okay? They said they gave $3,078,000 to charity. Interestingly, $57,000 they claim went to the Clinton Global Initiative. Now, the Clinton Global Initiative was not a charity.
Well, so they own it, right?
Well, it was a business development exercise that was illegally organized and operated, and they counted as a charity that should have gotten a 50%, up to 50% of your income could be deducted because it's supposedly a public charity. It was not a public charity, but they knew, their advisors knew the distinction between a public charity and a private charity. This Humana Challenge sure looks to me like a golf tournament, and I'm not sure how that turns into being a public charity. But this is small money, $78,000. $3 million went to something called the Clinton Family Foundation, okay? And this is a tax return filed in May of 2014 for 2013. So it's filed after the Clintons had illegally seized control of the Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation by changing the bylaws, okay? They made a $300,000 defective donation to something called the William J. Clinton Foundation at some point in 2013, but there was no such entity called William J. Clinton Foundation, claiming, and that amount was 16.5% of the total, okay? So it's material at the Clinton Family Foundation level. This is a taxable expenditure, in my judgment. Now, what they didn't disclose is that Bill and Hillary Clinton got $3.9 million in income via this WJC LLC from Laureate Education during 2013.
Whoops.
So in other words, they more than paid for all their charitable foundation donations by getting $3.9 million in income for Bill's part-time work as Chancellor of Laureate Education.
Did you make the air quotes around work?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what trouble could he have possibly gotten into chasing co-eds around the world at for-profit universities that are illegally organized in places where you're not allowed to have for-profit organizations, like Chile as one example.
That depends on what your definition of profit is.
Right. So this is a large sum. The donation of $300,000 is large to the William J. Clinton Foundation, but the fact that Bill and Hillary failed to report $3.9 million of income gleaned from a substantial donor to the Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation that more importantly was a joint venture partner in the CGI University is a serious crime, a serious disclosure crime. And Corinne Brown is in prison for 5 years for just over the life of a charity, failing to report, I think, $800,000. This is $3.9 million in 1 year. This is a $300,000 donation. And then in addition, if that's not bad enough, Bill and Hillary derived another $1.75 million from another Clinton Foundation donor, GEMS Education. And if we hit this story here, this link story here, Daily Caller, well, let's not do Daily Caller. People could do this at their leisure. You could see that these are highly challenged operations. Laureate and GEMS have fallen under scrutiny for all kinds of problems. There we have it.
Yeah. Doesn't want to come over here to this screen.
Yes. Yeah. All right, so that's 2013. We have a $300,000 problem with a donation out of the Clinton Family Foundation to something they called a public charity that is not a public charity, and we have the Clintons earning $5 million from suspect sources who are engaged either as substantial donors to the Clinton Foundation or as a joint venture partner. I mean, just that one set of things in 2013, the tax return was filed in 2014, should have caused Barack Obama and the Democrats to say, as to you, Hillary Clinton, thinking that you're going to be the Democratic nominee in 2015-16 election cycle, that ain't happening.
This is a Dubai-based, a UAE company that's teaching Sharia law.
Right.
That's not good.
And this is by, I think this investigation is by Richard Pollack as well, and is, I think, we see, yeah, Richard Pollack, the same person who was dogging is dogging this recent raid. And look at this, he only gets 2 Facebook shares for this story. It should have
That's ridiculous.
100,000 Facebook shares.
From 2016, I mean, that just can't be possibly true.
I guess. It happened in August of 2016. I guess people were on vacation.
All but 2. I don't know. I'm not really buying that. I think it's got to do with that Google story we saw about them suppressing news that they don't like.
Right. So here we have, this is just 1 year. Massive errors, uncorrected errors, but it's part of a continuing practice of knowingly filing false and materially misleading IRS returns at personal level, at Clinton Foundation level, Family Foundation level, the private family deal, and also at the main Clinton Foundation, at CHI, at CGI, at all the affiliates. These substantial illegal payments, suspect payments, are impossible in my mind to defend as to the value, and it's even more difficult to defend why these material concerns were not reported to the IRS, to state authorities, etc. Many states focus primarily on this. Is a trustee, a significant trustee, deriving a personal benefit from a donor via arrangements that are not structured at arm's length? That is a serious crime, right? So did they do it just in 2013? Let's see what happened in 2014.
Let me guess.
This should say 2014.
Doesn't it?
I made a mistake there. It should say 2014. This return was filed in 2015 for 2014. Here you see they put $3 million into the Clinton Family Foundation. So 99% of their contributions are to the Clinton Family Foundation, which turns around and gives $1.865 million to, again, this William J. Clinton Foundation that doesn't exist. Its name has been changed to something else. It's 50% of the total money that was, they claim, that went outside the Clinton Family Foundation, went to this defective thing that was controlled by the Clintons illegally, therefore wasn't a public charity. So this is another taxable expenditure by the Clinton Family Foundation. And once again, we have Bill getting a raise, $4.3 million for laureate education. Wow. And laureate education is still very much a fake, involved in this joint venture, CGI University, which is not registered in any state validly as a university, especially including New York, and is a donor to the ostensible donor to this screwed up public charity, the main one. In addition, they get another $2.1 million from this GEMS education. So there's a continuing pattern and practice. And we look at this, look at the decisions to make contributions. They give it $2,500 to, a church in Little Rock, $200 to Bill's high school class.
Why bother?
I know, exactly. Why would you do that? $20,000 to this First United Methodist Church.
Really, though. Why would they send $200? Maybe that's for like their high school reunion?
I guess. Yeah, it would have been the 50th reunion. But
maybe that's tickets for the high school reunion. But he didn't go to his high school reunion. You would have heard about that all over the place.
Who knows? But the point is, the point is here that if the Clintons wanted to make a donation to a public charity, they could have, instead of giving money to this entity to turn around and give it to this entity, they could have just written a check for $1.865 million to the public charity, and in theory taken a 50% deduction for claiming that it's a public. So my point here is that they had to understand, the people around this, the lawyers and the accountants, had to understand the significance and test whether the Clinton Foundation entities were indeed public charities. This is not an idle question. This is a very important question. The people who did the tax work for the Clintons personally are at risk. The people who did the audits for the various entities are at risk. Lawyers here are at risk. This sure looks to me like a criminal, racketeering, and corrupt enterprise designed to create the appearance of charitable activity and the ability to solicit vast sums, billions of dollars, that would come towards the Clintons, feather their nests personally and politically, and actually never be checked. This looks like lying under oath and obstructing justice to me. Now, this is 2 years where they did this, 2 successive years. And mind you, there are bigger problems than this, but these problems alone, these 2 cases that we're showing you, these 2 years of recent inside the statute of limitations cases are cases that dwarf the crimes for which Corinne Brown and Steve Stockman were convicted and are headed to prison for 5 and 10 years respectively.
Well, let me ask you this, specifically with regard to going from the one foundation to the other foundation. Is there any practical reason why? I mean, anytime I see somebody converting things to this and then back to this, it seems like money laundering.
Well, one reason that people might try to do this is to monkey around with timing. In other words, if you and some very famous celebrities do this, they create these captive foundations, grant-making foundations, and then they put money in the captive foundations, but the captive foundations don't make grants. They just take the money and they hold on to it and they say, we're building up capital tax-free so we can be more charitable later on. So this is an area that really needs to be scrutinized incredibly closely. And of course, it hasn't been, right? So if we go to the final slide.
Wow, we're moving quickly today, Charles.
That's right. They do it again. They do it again. This again should say the 2015 return. They claim $1 million of 1042 million of total contributions. 1.5 million, another defective donation to this William J. Clinton Foundation, claiming they have no relationship to it. 57% of the total.
Did you say we have no relationship to that charity, Monica Lewinsky?
That's right. Yeah. And again, they get less money in 15, only $1.1 million from Laureate, and less from GEMS, only 562,500 from GEMS. But it's a 3-year pattern and practice of benefiting personally from donors to their ostensible charity and making a complete hash of their filings. A complete hash. So for those people who are wondering, I mean, we could go on for many, many more hours into these details, but I just wanted to give some of the high points so that people following this can see that it's not simply exposure for the Clintons personally on their personal returns, on their family foundation returns. It's exposure for them as well on all their state returns. For example, these fees the speaking fees that when they earn them in California, do they pay state income tax in California on that appropriately? You know, how do they handle taking something in as income and transferring it to the foundation? There's a lot of supporting analysis and that should go into this here, but it sure looks to me that this has been a scheme from the inception. On October 23rd, 1997, the Clintons were fundamentally bankrupt. Their hard assets were tiny, their real liabilities were massive. There was no guarantee that he would survive the path that he was on, which led to impeachment but not to conviction. There was no guarantee that Hillary would win as a senator, yet these law firms were willing to pay allow the Clintons not to pay bills that ran to like $14 million.
That's quite weird.
That's really weird. I mean, every time I've ever dealt with a lawyer,
they want money.
They want money up
right
front.
Away. Yeah.
And
they call you to tell you, oh yeah, all that money ran out. We need more money.
Right. Exactly. So this is this whole area of globalist law firms that want favors out of the political establishment, doing these subtle favors, which I would argue the law firm Skadden Arps and Williams Economy, I would argue they made an illegal loan to the Clinton family that had no legitimate basis to run up $14 million.
Because lawyer jokes aside, I think the reason that they do that is that they know they're dealing in something that even if the outcome is not good, you got to pay. And if it's not good, people are way less likely to pay after the bad outcome than when they need you to do what needs to be done.
Right, exactly.
So it's totally anomalous that a law firm would do that.
Right, and then when you consider that the firm that negotiated the upfront large advances for the books is none other than Williams and Connolly.
Oh, perhaps there is some way the book advance is involved in paying the bill?
Exactly.
Huh. I tell you, Charles, there's a lot of weird shenanigans going on.
Yeah, I mean, so this, it'd be one thing if we were talking here about a presidential family that, were the Beverly Hillbillies, out there and they're shooting, with a shotgun and they miss the raccoon, but up comes the bubbling crude. I mean, here you have a rogue scholar.
Is that how the Beverly Hillbillies got started?
And, you know, they, at least from memory on television long ago, these are people who, Bill and Hillary both have strong academic credentials. They just seem, neither of them, to have a conscience or any understanding of the difference between right and wrong. And they met, you know, Bill had been a Rhodes Scholar, and they meet at Yale Law School. The story is well known. Their political partnership is fruitful in theory over many, many years. But Bill was the Attorney General, he was the governor, he was the president, she was the senator. You know, you can't, and she's been in multiple articles, the smartest, you know, women lawyers in the world, or whatever, lawyers in the world. You can't look at this and say, you know, this just happened by accident. You know, Bill and Hillary, they were too busy. They spent all their time thinking about advancing the rights of humans around the world and helping people around the world. They weren't troubled by these details. Why can't you say that? Because the tax return for the Clinton Family Foundation is signed by Bill and Hillary, right? They had, after the time when they had illegally demanded and asserted control of the main charity, which was the beneficiary of some of these grants, illegally claiming on the Clinton Family Foundation return that they had no relationship whatsoever with the William J. Clinton Foundation, even though they controlled it. I mean, it's just the kind of stuff.
Is that a relationship, controlling it?
I guess we could debate that.
They do like semantics.
Right. But I mean, if you had the type of question, you referred to Jerome Corsi, the idea that you would go into, take a 72-year-old person, same age as I think Hillary, and subject that person to however many hours of questioning, not where it's Madam Secretary. We'd like to ask you first, how would you rank your accomplishments on a scale of Mother Teresa or Jesus Christ or Mahatma Gandhi? How do you think those other three laggards compare to the great things? I mean, instead of having that type of questioning, if Hillary Clinton were subjected to the ordeal over allegations of crimes here, this is not investigating Hillary Clinton,
right.
This is a charity fraud. If she alone were subjected to the type of treatment that Jerome Corsi has had to endure and other people has had to endure, I think we would begin to see the truth about what's going on here. And the fact that she is not treated that way tells me that the hands of justice are still tied and the eyes are blindfolded. And Donald Trump has got to address that. He has got to address that, because if he does not address it, first of all, the country will sink in and become a Shaitholi. But worse than that, he will be a victim of rogue operations, and he will also lose what remaining support he has if he doesn't stand up for the people who have been so afflicted. He can stand up. He has the tools. He understands this. He has an audience. This is not I would not want to have the Clintons' hand right now. You got Maureen Dowd throwing shade in the Sunday New York Times on the Clintons, saying, you know, give her the hook, get rid of these Clintons. You got these pesky facts, and we're just doing this through publicly available facts. I mean, I'm not going in, I'd be happy to try to help, alongside the FBI, raiding the Clinton Foundation, seeing the bank accounts, seeing the working papers, seeing all the hidden details that the public doesn't generally get to see. Out of publicly available information alone, you build an overwhelming case that this is the Bonnie and Clyde of charity, with potty head diarrhea along for the show, deciding that she wants to join the crime family as well.
I think we have done Bonnie and Clyde in the past. And you know, Charles, I get quite a few emails from people on truth at crowdsourcethetruth.org who are irritated that you haven't prosecuted the Clintons and invaded their house and collected. I don't know what they expect you to do, but they say, nothing's happening. Charles is just talking and nothing's happening. I think every week you're presenting a new case. I know every week you're presenting a new case with new evidence. And the thing that becomes overwhelming when you look at the body of work overall is that there's virtually no repetition. I mean, sometimes we refer back to concepts we've spoken about, but each and every one of the 123 videos that I've done with you, you've presented information that, if that was the only evidence, would be criminal conviction for decades.
Well, thanks for saying that. I think I did send you some This Just Ins.
Yes. I have those. We've got some interesting news. Well, this one was about 4 investigations that share a common thread. Take us through this for a minute, because I was reading it and I wasn't quite sure what to make of this. I mean, it's strange for sure, but what is this all about?
So what we suggested long ago is that if the Trump administration and the Department of Justice, the Internal Revenue Service are serious about exposing this fraud for what it is and then convicting people and getting penalties and fines paid and recovering money for the benefit of taxpayers, you would go through the supposed 3,300, I think it is, I forget what the number is, it was a big number, commitments to action in the Clinton Global Initiative, and examine every single one of them to see, biggest size first to smallest size last, how many of them are real and how many are business development schemes and frauds or whatever. This is a story that pieces together 4 different strands and muses about some investigations, but the piece I found particularly interesting was one about a large Clinton Foundation donor who has, I think, been attacked now for possibly obtaining a multi-billion-dollar contract illegally. And so with this, we're always speculating, are they making progress, are they not making progress? I read this to say that maybe there's more progress behind the scenes than we assume. I am deeply troubled by Christopher Wray's being hired to be head of the FBI based on my high regard for Sidney Powell, who wrote in her book License to Lie that Christopher Wray was a Mueller disciple. Christopher Wray worked on the Enron task force, and there are specific problems that Sidney alleges in her book. Buy it and read it for yourselves.
Wow, that's License to Lie.
Yeah, License to Lie. So I'm concerned about Christopher Wray, but he is on the hot seat, and he has got to acquit himself. If we get, another dopey Comey-style press conference where Christopher Wray comes out next week and says, we've been on this ever since Donald Trump's inauguration, we've done an internal study, and we've concluded that there is nothing there, then we know we have big-ass problems with Wray.
I'll tell you, I have a lot of faith in Sidney Powell and not nearly as much faith in Christopher Wray. She's got her website there, Creeps on a Mission, where she talks about all these people that are working against the president. And I mean, she's a very impressive lawyer who used to be in the Department of Justice, right?
Yeah.
So she certainly knows firsthand what's what over there. And then we had another late-breaking item that you wanted to discuss, which of course was from the New York Post, which is always quite entertaining. This was talking about President Trump preparing for political war. I found this article interesting. It seems to be having Michael Goodwin having faith in the president, which I hope he's right. I hope it does seem like he is preparing, right? He hasn't been tweeting that much today. I
don't know that he has tweeted today. No doubt he's pretty tired, having rushed down to Argentina and rushed back. But
his thumbs are worn out.
I think with the Trump calculus, the way I would look at this is that there is no way that one is going to satisfy people like Shifty Adam Schiff, Maxine Waters, the New York Times. You're never going to satisfy those people. If Donald Trump, announced tomorrow morning that the reason he was quiet is that he had actually been contacted by an alien civilization that loved his work so much they wanted to make the universe great again, and so they're coming over here with $10 billion for each resident of planet Earth. You'd have the people in exactly the same for everybody. You'd have the
communist aliens.
Yeah, the same people who say, no, that's a false gift. It's just going to drive prices skyrocketing. It's just damaging. Trump has done it again. I mean, you just can't satisfy. So once you assess that there's no way you're going to satisfy the globalist, unregulated mafia, you just have to say, listen, we've got to do a lay-down case. We've got to come with overwhelming force. We've got to expose the swamp for what it is. We've got to drain the swamp. And having made progress in draining the swamp, if Trump does want to run for re-election in 2020, he has a chance of winning. To me, it seems he's facing a very important fork in the road here. On the one hand, he's made a lot of progress, I would argue, and he is 72, I guess. So he could do the calculation of saying, maybe I should just be a one-term president.
I don't think that's his style.
Just saying, you could imagine somebody saying that, and the virtue of saying that you're just going to be a one-term president is that you're not hostage to the argument that you may not get reelected. I mean, you just get done what you want to get done, get the deals done, make the progress.
But he hasn't done that yet. He's got to...
I know, I'm pretty sure he's going to try to run for reelection, but that's an important set of decisions he's making. You know, it's not easy to do what he's doing. He's not a Superman, nobody is. And he's got a large family with a lot of grandchildren and kids and stuff like that. And so you could imagine him making the very deep, introspective musings that should be made at this time of year. On the other hand, he's got to make it through to 2020 no matter what. And we know the Congress is stealing for a fight. We know they're going to go after his personal income tax returns and after his business dealings and all this kind of stuff. And he still has not declassified the FISA warrant.
Why?
That stuff needs to be declassified tonight. It needs to be out there so we can study it, the implications. There needs to be a massive, I don't speak lightly about the California fire. I was born in California. It was a great state, no longer. But you know, we need the metaphorical equivalent of a gigantic California wildfire over this issue of the Clinton Foundation, the FISA warrant, public corruption, and we need to see people held to account.
Yeah.
Because the Clintons have been guilty. They have been guilty of wholesale public corruption and charity fraud for decades on a scale not contemplated by anyone I've ever encountered in my life. And yet they've gotten away with it, and we cannot say, it's okay, because then Barack Obama and his people are going to do it.
He's gearing up already, of course, as we've discussed.
And people we don't know will try to do it. So.
And people we do know.
Exactly.
Well, Charles, that's been quite a presentation, and one of my favorite graphics, love the Terminator. Oh, the first two, they sort of fell off a cliff after that. But I want to thank everybody for watching, Charles, and remind everyone that Crowdsource the Truth is viewer-sponsored, avoiding the financial influence of corporate sponsors or Google shadow banning. So even if you aren't watching the exclusive content on patreon.com, I hope that people will become sponsors by going there. It's the beginning of the month, so now is a great time to sponsor. $2 a month, $5 a month. It's really 1 month. It's less than the price of one copy of the Wall Street Journal, which you probably want to buy one copy of the Wall Street Journal, train your dog how to go to the bathroom on that, or line a birdcage, or whatever you might do. You could start your Christmas Yule log fire by rolling up the Wall Street Journal and sticking it in there and lighting it on fire.
Well, these are cheaper.
That's true. You could order that from Amazon.com. But people can also go to paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. But you're going to get your best value on Patreon for $2 a month, $5 a month, $25 a month. You're going to get exclusive programming. We've got tons of great shows that we've done with Kevin Shipp, Michael Moore, David Hawkins, Ole Damagard. We're going to be adding new shows, and it's a great way to support Patreon, which is an independent company separate from Google, Facebook, all these things, and also to support Crowdsource the Truth. So I want to thank all of our generous Patreon sponsors and encourage other people to sponsor. You know, these fancy animations, they don't do themselves, Charles.
That's right. That's right.
Well, I'll see you on Wednesday when we'll continue closing in. We'll know more. I mean, we've got the government taking a holiday on the 5th because, anyway. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow.